Okay, good evening everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Baruchim Abbaim. We have a major topic we're beginning tonight. Davar Sheyeish Matirim. Siman Kuf Beis. Siman Kuf Beis. We learned in Siman Kuf about Beria is not batal, Afilu B'Elef. In Kuf Aleph we learned about Chatich Harula Skabed is not batal. Those were dinei d'Rabbanan, that they're not batal. The reason they're not batal is mitam chashivuse. It's because of their importance. Siman Kuf Beis, we're going to learn about another item that's not batal, and in a sense, this is the most chamer of all the items that are not batal. And the reason that's reflected in the fact that by Beria and Chatich Harula Skabed, if we're dealing with an Isser d'Rabbanan, then if we're mesupik, whether it's Ruya Skabed or mesupik if it's a Beria, we're mekel, Savik d'Rabbanan Lakula. By Kuf Beis, Siman Kuf Beis, Davar Sheyeish Matirim, even though, as we're going to see, that's also, the reason it's not batal is also only midrabanan. Still, if we're mesupik, if it's Davar Sheyeish Matirim, it's also not batal, which flies in the face of the rule of Safek Drabanan Lakula. But that's a good trivia question. What Isser Drabanan are we machmer by a Safek? Davar Sheyeish Matirim. The basic logic of why Davar Sheyeish Matirim, literally that means something that has a heter. The time will come when it will become mutter. And it's lav dafka, it will become mutter tomorrow. It could be in a bit. It could be in 7 days. We're going to see in the end of the Siman, it applies to Hilchos Pesach. You have chametz is considered Davar Sheyeish Matirim. But it's going to take 7 days until Pesach is over. Well, that's called Davar Sheyeish Matirim also. Okay, so the basic logic is enunciated by Rashi Masechta Be'ah Daf Gimel Amud Beis, where Rashi says, "Ad sheyoichlenu be'isur yochlenu beheter." Why rely on bittul and eat it in a state where it might be asur? Just wait. Why should you rely on this kula? Why should you rely on this kula? You say, no, what do you mean, bittul? Okay, you're right. I always say when somebody asks a shaila and they want to be lenient, there has to be A, good basis to be lenient, and B, there has to be a reason to be lenient. In other words, one is the leniency has to be based in halacha, and two, the person has to have a need. If the person doesn't have a need, then you have no right to be lenient for them. So Davar Sheyeish Matirim says, there's no need to be lenient here. Just wait. Don't rely on the kula. What do you mean? There's a valid kula. You're right, there's a valid kula, but you have no right to rely on it. Whenever somebody's lenient in halacha, you always need to fulfill two ingredients. Ingredient number one is there has to be basis for the leniency, and number two, you have to have a tzoyrech to rely on it. You have to have a need. But by Davar Sheyeish Matirim, Rashi seems to be saying, you don't have a need to be lenient. Why do you have to be lenient? Just wait. It's not necessary to rely on this leniency. That's the basic logic, but as we're going to see, there are other logics that are going to be involved over here, because the big curveball is that Davar Sheyeish Matirim is only not batal min b'minai. Min b'she'enai minai, it is batal. As opposed to Beria and Chatich Harula Skabed, there, since the reason it's not batal is because of its chashivos, those things are not batal. Not only min b'minai, also min b'she'enai minai. We did see the Isser v'heter in Siman Kuf Aleph Sivkat and Yud Beis that says Beria and Chatich Harula Skabed are batal be'enoi minai. And remember I told you last time, you get extra credit if you could come up with a logic. Why would that be? Right? But simply, we don't hold that way. You see, if something that's not batal because of its importance is not batal min b'minai, min b'she'enoi minai. But Davar Sheyeish Matirim, there's a special reason it's not batal. The reason is ad sheyochlenu be'isur yochlenu beheter. But we're going to see there are other logics that come into play, and some of them are very, very subtle. For those who learn Daf HaShavua, one of them we saw in the Ran on Daf Nun Beis in Nadarim. Okay, that's a little bit of an intro. Siman Kuf Beis. Now here's the plan. Right now, In the next 3 weeks, we're going to be a bit ambitious. In the next 3 Sunday nights, there are 4 blot. We're going to try to do 4 blot in the next 3 weeks, because on February 22nd is the day of reckoning. February 22nd, mark it on your calendar, is the meeting with the Nitei Gabriel. And if you're scared, you should be. You should start being scared right now. Don't say you can't handle the pressure. Pressure is good for you. Finally, maybe you'll do something. And if you're nervous, be very nervous. You should be very, very nervous. You should be full of anxiety. You shouldn't be able to sleep for the next 3 weeks. No, I'm dramatizing. Let's say half the nights you'll be able to sleep. Okay? No, it's not a pressured test. But we're going to be, the test for Nitei Gabriel is going to be on Kuf Beis and Kuf Gimel. Yeah, we're really going to try very hard to do that. Just try to have the basic principles and you will be fine. And ignore all the drama and the scary tactics that I tried to use. That wasn't, that was just part of the making the share interesting. Okay, Siman Kuf Beis. Kol Davar Sheyeish Matirim. Anything that has a ultimate leniency, anything that will become mutter. For example, what? An egg that's born on Yom Tov. Halach is a beya that's born on Yom Tov. You're not allowed to eat it on Yom Tov. However, as soon as Yom Tov is over, it's mutter. It's not asur forever. It's mutter when Yom Tov is over. Sharuya l'machar, that it's mutter the next day. Im nesariv ba'achiris, if it gets mixed with other eggs, it doesn't matter, bein shlema, whether it's whole, bein shrufa, whether it's cracked or scrambled or mashed. Eina betela, is not bato afilu be'elaf. It's not bato even be'elaf. Another example of davar sheish lo matirin, since it's Tu B'Shvat. What exactly is Tu B'Shvat? The Aderes, Rabbi Yehuda Rabinowitz Tu'umim, was a great Rav in Yerushalayim. He's the founder of Rabbi Yitzchak Chaim Cook. He wrote an autobiography. I think it's called Nefesh Chaya. And he says that in his mind, the purpose of Tu B'Shvat, since Tu B'Shvat is a line of demarcation for Meiser, that whatever had Chanata before Tu B'Shvat is last year's produce, whatever has Chanata after Tu B'Shvat is this year's produce. So Tu B'Shvat is a day to learn Hilchos Zeraim. Hilchos halachos that are taloi bekarka of Eretz Yisrael. So an example, which is nagir for Tu B'Shvat, is let's say you have a tevel. In other words, you have some produce that you didn't take off meiser from that got mixed up with other produce. That's davar sheish lo matirin, because you could just take off the meiser. That's actually the most classic case of davar sheish matirin. Okay, so the halacha is eino betel afil b'elef. It's not even batel in 1,000. What if you're mesupik? Va'afilu safek im nod b'yom tov. What if I'm not sure if this egg was born on Yom Tov? Maybe I think it was. Maybe yeah. Maybe no. I'm not sure. So the halacha is v'nesarev ba'achiros asuros. It's asur. V'im nisarva b'she'ena mina. But this halacha that davar sheish lo matirin is not batal is if it got mixed b'minoi. If it got mixed in einoi mina, batla b'samach. It is batal b'shishim. And the Ramah brings a whole slew of Rishonim who say this: the Torah, the Sharadura, the Chuvas Harash, Rabbi Nerucham Hagosh Sharadura, Rashal, Roikeach, the Smag, and many other Rishonim. Okay, now why in the world would davar sheish lo matirin be mutter and einoi minoi? After all, the logic is, why rely on bittul? Just wait. So the basic logic is going to be, and it's very hard to understand it, but the words are that when something falls in min b'minoi, let's say an egg falls into other eggs, you're giving a heter to the egg. Can't give a heter to the egg. Why give a heter to the egg? Just wait. But let's say when an egg gets mixed into meat, and the majority is meat, you're not giving a heter to the egg. You're giving a heter to the meat. Okay. Why can't I give a heter to the meat? The meat is not davar sheyeish lo matirin. The egg is davar sheyeish lo matirin. In other words, when it falls into einoi minoi, the label of the heter is not to the item that becomes usher. The label of the heter is to the mixture in general, and that's okay. Because the mixture is not something that has a heter to it. In other words, the thing that will become mutter is the davar usher. But when it falls into einoi minoi, you're not giving a heter to the isser, you're giving a heter to the taruvais. Okay, we'll see that inside on the shach and the taz. But that's the rule. The rule is davar sheyeish lo matirin is mutter im einoi minoi. Let's see the shach. The shach says, even if you're mesupik, the halacha is davar sheyeish lo matirin is aser. The shach brings a bunch of things from the Bach that he doesn't agree with any of them. And the one that we're going to focus on is the final thing the shach brings from the Bach. Gam asher kasav de bebeis taruvais yesh lahater davar sheyeish lo matirin. So let's say the case like this. You have an egg that was born on Yom Tif that gets mixed into other eggs. And so they're all aser until Yom Tov is us. Then an egg from that mixture falls into another mixture. So the Bach says, okay, then it's mutter. Then it's mutter. Meaning into a second mixture it's mutter. The Shach says nobody agrees to that. It's the same logic. Because what's the logic of why davar sheyeish lo matirin is aser? Just wait! So the same thing with the second taruvais. There's no difference between one taruvais and two taruvais. The shach does not agree with the Bach who says into a second mixture yesh lahater. No, says the shach, nobody holds that way. By the way, the Taz uncharacteristically agrees with his father-in-law on this one. The Taz in Sivkatan Daled says, "V'im oisai hataruvas nesarev achirav taruvas shenis mutter." So the Shach quotes the Bach that it's mutter, and the Shach disagrees, and the Taz says straight up it is mutter. We'll get into that machlokes in Siman Kuf Yud. Hashem should give us siyata d'shmaya to get there. Okay, now davar sheyeish lo matirin is not batal b'minoi, and is batal be'enoi minoi. How do you define minoi and enoi minoi? Does minoi mean the same taste, or does minoi mean the same name, the same shame? Says the Shach in Sivkatan Gimel, Nira dehacha azlinan basar shma, v'loi basar taima. It appears, in my opinion, says the Shach, the Ramah doesn't spell this out, but the definition of minoi and enoi minoi is the same name. Are they called eggs or are they not called eggs? Not do they taste like eggs. Are they called eggs? The Shach spells it out. De'imu shava b'shma, if it has the same name, afagav deloi shava b'taima, even though it doesn't have the same taste, havali min b'minoi, it's considered the same species, v'loi batal. V'im einoi shava b'shma, if it doesn't have the same name, afagav the shava b'taima, even though it has the same taste, havalei shaloi b'minoi ubatal, it's a different name and it's batal. So if it doesn't have the same name, even though it has the same taste, it's batal. And the Shach says, because we hold like Rava in Perek Basra of Masechta Avodah Zarah. Now, this is different than we said earlier. Remember earlier when we were defining min b'minoi, min b'she'enoi minoi, that min b'she'enoi minoi, you always need shishim d'oraisa, min b'minoi, you don't need shishim d'oraisa. There the Shach said, it's dependent on taste and not dependent on name. We hold like Rava? No. When it comes to being mavatel taste, of course, min b'she'enoi minoi means a different taste, and min b'minoi is the same taste. Earlier on in Sadiches, when we were dealing with abolishing the taste, nullifying taste, of course, min b'minoi is same taste, min b'she'enoi minoi is different taste. But here, it's not a matter of flavor. You see, we're going to clarify. the din of davar sheyeish lo matirin not being batal is we can't label heter to something that you could just wait. But that's when you're labeling the heter to the davar isser, as opposed to if it's in a mixture. So here the relevant factor is what it's called, because you're not nullifying the taste. This is not a matter of nullifying taste. This is nullifying an entity. This is nullifying a reality. So here the operating principle is, what is it called? If it has if the davar isser has the same name of the items that it fell into, that's min b'minoi. If it has a different name, it's min b'she'enoi minoi. Okay, that's what the Shach concludes. Daha kaimelon kerava beparak basar davas kechavim de basar shma azlinon v'loy basar taima. Even though, remember, the Ramah tried to pull this off earlier, and the Shach went to town on this. Right? The Ramah earlier tried to say also it's dependent on shame and not on taste. And there the Shach and the Taz both said, no, when you're abolishing flavor, of course it's a matter of taste and not name. But here, we definitely go like Rava, that this is a matter of shame and not a matter of taste. Now, look in the Shachs of Katan Daled. If it's a different min, it's baton shishem. Afal gav de le'inyan beria v'chaticha rula eskabed ein chiluk bein nesarva b'mina or shaloi b'mina. Even though when it comes to beria not being batal, chaticha eskabed not being batal, there's no difference whether it got mixed in min or shaloi b'mina, like we say in Siman Kuf Aleph Sivav. Shani hacha, here it's different. Why? De'ein achashivus mitzad ha'isser atzmai. What's the reason davar sheyeish lo matirin is not batal? It's not because of the importance of the davar isser. The whole reason it's not batal is because, wait, it will have a heter later. The Shach is quoting Rashi in Beya Gimel Amud Beis. The reason why davar sheyeish lo matirin is not batal, the Chachamim say, since it will become batal later, it will become mutter later, we don't want to rely on bittul. So here's the bomb. V'chol shenesarev shaloi b'minoi. When something mixes shaloi b'minoi, ein haheter nikra ala davar ha'asar. We're not labeling the heter for the item which was asar. Ela al shem davar shenesarev by. We're giving the heter to what it got mixed into. And so for example, if an egg got mixed into meat, so what are we giving the heter to? We're giving the heter to the meat. Okay, meat is not a davar sheyeish lo matirin. The meat itself is a davar mutter. It's not something that will become mutter. It is mutter. So that's not called giving a heter to something that will ultimately become mutter. You see, if an egg falls into an egg, so you're mattering an egg. What do you mean I'm mattering an egg? But the egg will become mutter, so we don't have a right to label heter to the egg. The egg will become mutter. But if the egg falls into a different item, that other item is not davar sheyeish lo matirin. Those are the words of the logic. That now, we see something very important from the Shach. The Shach is saying, Kol shenasar shaloi b'minoi. I'm sorry, the line before. Me'achar sheyeh lo heter achakach lo yirotzu chachamim lehisbatel. The din that davar sheyeish lo matirin is not batal is the choice of the rabbis. The rabbis didn't want it to become batal. It is not a din. To underline that line and underline it twice. It's the rabbis didn't want it to become batal. It's not a din d'oraisa that davar sheyeish lo matirin is not batal. Even though we're going to see the Taz is going to quote a Ran, and you can make the case. Well, maybe mid'oraisa it's not batal. But the Shach says openly the din of davar sheyeish lo matirin not being batal is a din d'Rabbanan. Okay. Let's see the Taz.
If you had eggs that fell into the cholent, you just have, do you take the eggs out, or does it just become bottle of the whole mixture?
Again, anytime you could identify it, You always have to take it out. It will never become bato. It has to be a case. It fell in and you're not able to distinguish between the egg and the meat. Okay, that's the case. Let's see the Taz Siv Katan Beis. The Mechaber said whether the egg fell in shalem or smashed up. What do you mean shalem? Perush. If it fell in shalem, shehi belav hachi eina betela. If an egg fell in shalem, then even irrespective of the fact that this egg will become mutter after Yom Tov, it's not batal anyway. To have a davar shabaminyan, eggs are sold by count, and something which is sold by count is not batal. So you might make a mistake and say, well, if it's shalem and it's not batal because it's davar shabaminyan, maybe it will only have the chumras of davar shabaminyan. No, says the Taz. Not only is it not batal because davar shabaminyan, it also have the chumras of davar sheyeish lo matirin, the nafkamina being if you're mesupik. If you're mesupik, then if it's just shalem, then it will become batal. Davar shabaminyan would become batal if you're mesupik, if it's a davar aser. But if it's safek davar sheyeish lo matirin, it will not become batal. That's why we pick the case of shalem, to indicate that don't think, well, it already is not batal. Maybe you'll think, ein davar she'enoi batal chalal davar she'enoi batal. In other words, maybe you would think you can't, could an item not be batal for two reasons? Yeah, that's the chiddush of the Mechaber. That not only is it not batal because it's davar shabaminyan, it's also not batal because it's davar sheyeish lo matirin, and therefore in a case of safek will be machmir. Okay, see the Taz in Siv Katan Hey. This might be my favorite piece in Taruvais. Fasten your seatbelts for this Taz. The Taz is now going to take a Ran in Nadarim. The Ran spans like 50 lines. It's literally one of the most lamdasha pieces in Shas. And the Taz, Be'amkusai Hagadoila, condenses this Ran into about 10 lines. And it's very simple. And there's a lot of juice in this Taz. Says the Taz, why a davar sheyeish lo matirin is not batal? Why is it batal be'eina mina? Says the Taz, v'im nesarva be'sheina mina hatam kosabti le'el siman kuf alav sivav. You know why davar sheyeish lo matirin is batal be'eina mina? The same thing that the Shach said. Lefi she'ein ha'heter achar kach nikra al ha'isr. The heter is not on the davar aser, on the egg. Ala taruva shenes, it's on the mixture. V'hu einay mino shelo iser. And the mixture is a different species than the iser. Remember, that's the logic that the Shach said, that when it falls into einay minoi, the label of the heter is not to the davar iser, but it's to the mixture in general. The Taz says, no, I don't like that. I don't like it. No, it's not good enough. That's not a good enough svara. It's a weak svara. Bottom line is, why in the world do we allow this to go through? It should be batal. Wait, isn't the logic why davar sheyeish lo matirin is not batal? Because you could just wait. So what's the nafkamina if it falls into minoi or einoi minoi? This semantics, this complex offering of words, that when you give a heter, the heter is not on the davar iser, it's on the mixture. I don't care what the heter is on. Why should we allow bittul? Just wait. Okay? So the Taz therefore says, I don't know why the Torah Chatas and the Kadmoinim don't quote the Ran on this one. There's an amazing Ran. There's an amazing Ran. We just learned Parshas B'Shalach. The Avnei Nezer says, learning the Ran on Nadarim is Mevatel Amalek. I can't explain further, but he says learning the Ran on Nadarim is Mevatel Amalek. Actually, I will explain, okay? Because Amalek comes from cloudy, hazy thinking, and there is no more sharper analysis of Lamdas than the Ran on Nadarim. Reb Chaim Brisker said if you want to learn how to learn, you should learn the Ran on Nedarim. So here we go. This is like 50 lines of the Ran condensed by the Taz. If you remember, who remembers this? Earlier on we said, in min b'she'enoi minoi, you need shisha midairaisa. Min b'minoi, you really shouldn't need shisha midairaisa. It's a gzeira, so we require shisha midrabanan. Does everyone agree to that? You remember there's a shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds min b'minoi is not batal. Rabbi Yehuda, there's a shita, min b'minoi is not batal. Do we hold like Rabbi Yehuda? No, the Chachamim argue on Rabbi Yehuda. But let's understand Rabbi Yehuda. Where did Rabbi Yehuda get this from? Min b'minoi is not batal. Says the Ran. Says the Taz. We're going to read it inside. Utmihani. I wonder. I have a question. Lama loy kasav divrei haran bezeh perak hanoider min hamavushal. Why didn't the Kadmoinim quote the Ran? Bezeh toiref terutzei. This is in a nutshell what the Ran says. The chazinon l'Rabbi Yehuda the svirulei min b'minoi be'isr v'heter loy batal. That min b'minoi by isr v'heter is not batal. Where did Rabbi Yehuda get this from? He got it from Karbonos. V'yalefla midachsiv. It says, V'lakach midam apar umidam hasoyer. The kohen will take from the blood of the bull and the goat. Now there's more blood in the bull than a goat. So why do we call it, and the blood of a goat? The blood of the goat should become batal. Even though the blood of the bull is more than the goat, kari le damasar, alma loy batal. Says Rabbi Yehuda, we see from here that since they're both dam, min b'minoi loy batal, misham de min b'minoi hu. Now, to read a pasuk that way, you're going to learn out, you're going to read a pasuk. A Tana is just going to read a pasuk and say, oh, it says damapar, damasoyer. Why is it called damasoyer? But there's more damapar. Are you kidding me? There has to be a logic to that. Why would it not be batal by min b'mina? Oh, Rabbi Yehuda supplies a logic. The logic is that when you have two things that are the same species, one doesn't nullify the other. No, just the opposite. They're mechazik each other. They strengthen each other. Since they're the same species, they give chizuk to each other. It doesn't weaken it. Adarabba, mechazkoi, it strengthens it. So Yehuda says we learn out a gzeras hakasav adin da'iraisa min b'minoi loy batal, because it's the same species and they're mechazik each other. So the question is, so the rabbis, why don't the rabbanon learn out from there min b'minoi ain't batal? The rabbanon say, are you kidding me? Of course, in that case it's not batal, because they're dealing with two items. They're both heter. They're both heter. So they're exact same thing. So why would one be mavatal the other? The Rabbanon say you can't learn out to Isser v'heter. Isser v'heter, they're different, because even though they're the same dam, but one is mutter and one is asr. So the fact that one is mutter and one is asr, that difference alone allows one to be mavatal the other. But you can't learn out from the lakach midam apar midam asar. The dam apar and the dam asar are both dvarim mutarim. So they're both dam, they're both dvarim mutarim, so therefore they're mechazik each other, they're not mavatal each other, and it's einoi batal. But you can't extrapolate from there to a min b'sheinoi minoi, because, you can't extrapolate to there to heter and isser, because the fact that one is mutter, one is asar, that alone is a distinction that allows one to be mavatal the other. Yalfi mizel isser v'heter. Why? Dibishlama dam parvasar shneim ksherim lazurika. They're both kosher to sprinkle on the mizbeach. But if one dam is mutter and one dam is kosher and one is treif, so mashein kein be'isser v'heter. Afal pishe min echad, even though they're the same species, mikamakim chalukim heim. They're different. Shazat isser, asr v'zeh mutter. And therefore, al-kain havalei ke'enoi minoi. The fact that one is mutter and one is asr, that makes it like enoi minoi. Meaning, fundamentally, the Rabbanon agreed to the Rabbi Yehuda that if you had two things that are exactly the same, we could learn out from Midama Par, Midama Sar that they're not mavatal each other. The Rabbanon just hold you can't extrapolate to Isser v'Heter, because by Isser v'Heter they're not exactly the same. One is Mutter and one is Asr. But come the Chachamim and say, you know what, Rabbi Yehuda, there is a case, if it's min b'minoi, and it's not Isser v'Heter, but the Isser is Davar Sheyeish lo Matirim, so now it's the same species, and don't give me this distinction that one is mutter and one is asr, because the Isser will become mutter. That, the Chacham say, will agree to Rabbi Yehuda, that's mamish like the lokach midama par midama soyer, because it's the same min, and even the distinction of one mutter and one asr, the asr will become mutter. So then it reverts back to, the Chacham say, will concede to Rabbi Yehuda. V'zehu b'min b'minoi ki hahi dedam par v'sar. Ma'shein ki b'min she'enoi. One second. Umisham hachi amrinan b'yesh loy matirin. If there is going to be a heter, have a dumya dedam par v'sar. It's like what Rabbi Yehuda tried to learn out from the dam par and the dam sahir. Ein kan chiluk bein isser leheter. There's no difference between the isser and the heter, because even the isser will become mutter. Shari gam ha'isser servli is mutter. Now, I want to point out, is this a din da'iraisa that it's not batal, or a din da'rabanan? L'chayr, it's still a din da'rabanan, because it's not that the is, because the Isser is Asr, and the Heter is Mutter. So it's not mamish like the Dam Par and the Dam Sawyer. It's just the Chachomim feel it's doimet to the Dam Par and the Dam Sawyer. And therefore, midrabanan, it's not batal. But if it's min b'she'enoi minoi, then of course it's going to be batal. Then it's completely not similar to the Dam Par and the Dam Sawyer. And then it would be batal. In other words, the Ran is showing almost a biblical source why Davar Sheyeish lo Matirin is not batal, and that is the same way Rabbi Yehuda holds min b'minoi is not batal. Now, normally the Chachamim say min b'minoi is batal because it's different, because one is asr and one is mutter. But if the isser has an eventual heter, then we should say that it's mamish like the dam par and the dam sawyer. It's similar in nature, it's similar in isser, meaning they're both heter. And then we say they're not mavato each other, they're mechazik each other. Masha'ein kein b'min be'enoi minoi, even though they're both really heter, because one is mutter and the taruvis in general is mutter, and what got mixed in will become mutter. Afal pisha mitzad iser yesh lahem shivoy b'davar sheish lo matirin. Even though in the element that the iser they have an equivalency, kamakam yesh b'neim chiluk gadol. There is a big difference b'mashazeh min acher, because one of them is a different species. So if I were to ask you, what's the reason why min b'she'enoi minoi by davar sheish lo matirin it is batal? Why is it only not batal by min b'minoi and not by min b'she'enoi minoi? There are two reasons. Reason number one is what the Shach says, and what the Shach in Sivkat and Daled, and what the Taz says in the beginning of Sivkat and Hey, that if it's min b'she'enoi minoi, the words are, we're giving the heter not to the davar asr, but to the taruvais, so that's okay. And the Taz says, I don't know what you're talking about. It's not good. That's not a good answer. That's not a good. Those are nice words. It doesn't make sense. The Taz says, why don't we quote the Ran? Why don't we quote the Ran? That by min b'minai, the Chachamim fundamentally disagree with Rabbi Yehuda by min b'minai, because it's different, because one is mutter, one is asr. But by davar sheish lo matirin, then it's mamish like Rabbi Yehuda's dam ha'par v'dam ha'sar. But if it's min b'she'enoi minoi, it's not like the dam par v'dam ha'sar, because they're two different species. Yeah, was the Ran clear? Is this logic of the Ran clear? You're shaking your head that to the Ran it was clear.
You're saying because eventually it'll become mutar, so it's really like the same thing as the dam sa'ir and the other dam.
If it's min b'minoi, the one thing we know, dam par and dam sa'ir, they're both kosher lezrika, and therefore the dam sa'ir does not lose its identity. So Rabbi Yehuda wants to extrapolate from that, will always say min b'minoi loy batal, even if one is mutter and one is aser. The Chacham say you can't extend it to where one is mutter and one is aser, because then they're different in one being mutter, one is aser. But if the isser itself will become mutter, so now there are no differences. They're both min b'minai, and there's no difference. One is mutter, one's aser, because the isser is almost mutter already, or will become mutter. So the Davar Sheyeish Matirim removes the distinction that the Chacham made between the dam par and the dam soyer, which are both mutter, and the davar mutter and davar aser. I think that's a din d'Rabbanan. I'm pretty sure that's a din d'Rabbanan. Okay. Now, let's continue in the Rama. Says Rama, when we're defining min b'minai and min b'sheinai minai, so we said that an egg born on Yom Tov that got mixed with other eggs is min b'minai. An egg born on Yom Tov that got mixed into meat is min b'sheinai minai. What would you say, salt in dough, is that min b'minai? No. So right, there's something called salt. I want to explain something. There's something called salt. There's something called dough. These are things that happen in a kitchen. I'm not saying you should go into that place, but there is such a place. It's called a kitchen. That sometimes there's something called dough, something called salt, and these are different items, right? Or what about an egg and dough? These are different items. But says Rama, but what if the two items are mutually dependent on each other? Dough needs salt, dough needs eggs, and they get mixed together, and these two items enhance each other. We're not going to call that min b'sheinai minai, that's going to be called min b'minai. What do you mean? Salt is not dough, dough is not salt. Yeah, but when ingredients are mutually enhancing, that's min b'minai. They're dependent on each other. That will then be defined as min b'minai. Says Rama, miu, im lavnoi ba'machal. If you whitened a food, you used food A to whiten, to give color and appearance to another food. You put it into a cooked dish to fix it, to enhance it. You filled it up into the chicken. Eina betela. Then it doesn't become batal. Don't try to get away with the fact that it's min b'sheinai minai. Since A is enhancing B, that's called min b'minai. That's called min b'minai. Look in the Shach. The Shach says, miu im lavnai. Why? Kivan de l'chazusa avid. Since it's giving appearance, loy batal. It's not batal. If a food is giving meaning, even though we just said min b'sheinoi minoi by Davar Sheyeish Matirim is batal, but if it's giving appearance, einoi batal. Sivkat and vav in the Shach. The reason is, if it's put to enhance, hatam kasav mahari, the chol shenoisnin zeh b'zeh l'sakein zeh eseh. If they put them together to fix each other, zeh mikri min b'minoi. Kagain mayim umelach b'iso, water or salt in dough. The chashiva min b'minai is called min b'minai. Kimin shem esakin and isa, since they fix the dough. Look in the Taz. The Taz says, what are these two cases of the Rama? The two cases of the Rama are, number one, it gives appearance. Number two, it gives taste. Says the Taz, lo yizu avzu nakat. Not only case A, but even case B. Not only if you whiten the food, the avid lechazusa vitaima, that it's giving appearance and flavor. Dimikri gamkein min b'minai. Even if it's just giving flavor, that's also min b'minai. D'chol davar shetzarch zel lazeh. If it needs each other, k'goyin mayim u'melach v'yisa, like water and salt in dough, have a min b'minai. Now the Taz just points out, you're filling up the chicken with the egg, so now not only is it giving taste, but there is an actual substance in the chicken that's giving taste, as opposed to what we're going to see later on, that the Ramah says, we do not apply Davar Sheyeish lo Matirin to taste, something that is just giving taste. In other words, let's say you have an absorbed flavor in a food, and that absorbed flavor is chametz, let's say, it's Davar Sheyeish lo Matirin, because after Pesach it will become mutter. We don't say absorbed flavor becomes Davar Sheyeish Matirin. Davar Sheyeish Matirin doesn't apply to tam. It has to be of substance, not just flavor alone. Okay? Not just flavor alone. Yehuda, you're warm now? What? I think.
I'll zip up.
Yeah. Tell me if you get cold. Okay. The heat's still on, just the 70, the oven is off. Okay. Okay. That is Siif. Now, I'm going to suggest to Ha'ara that the way the Taz reads the Rama, not only case A, where you whiten the food so it's giving color and taste, but even if it's just giving taste, that's how the Taz reads the Rama. I would argue the Shach disagrees with that reading of the Rama, and the Shach learns it's not loizu avzu, it's telling you two different halachas. The first halacha is lavnoi, and lavnoi is it just gives color. And the second case is oinasna v'gdera, if it just gives taste. If you have either of those, because the way the Shach words it in Sivkat and Hey, by lavnoi is kivan de lechazusa of it, and he doesn't say vitaima. So maybe the Shach is not reading it loizu avzu, but the Ramah is saying the Shach would read it that the Ramah is saying two different chidushim. Okay, that's Amud Aleph. That's Sif Aleph. Sif Beis. Here we go. Yesh mi shomer. There are those who say, and the Taz says, I don't know why the Mechaber says Yesh mi shomer, because this halacha comes from the Raj and the Torah, and nobody argues on that. So, by the way, the Mishnah Berurah sometimes points out in the Mechaber that the Mechaber will say Yesh shomerim, and it's not a das, it's unanimous. But since it comes from one Rishon, and we don't find it in other Rishonim, he'll word it Yesh mi shomer, or I've seen in the Mishnah Berurah when the Mechaber says Yesh oimrim. And perhaps it's the same thing with this Yesh mi shomer. In other words, it doesn't mean there are those who argue. It's just, we know the Rashba says it. We don't know the Ran and the Rambam agree, but they don't argue. We could assume they agree, but it doesn't mean it's a das yachid. It's just, it comes from one Rishon. They say as follows. We only say Yesh Matirin, something is Yesh Matirin, if the heter is going to come, in other words, Mamela, Oi Im Hamater Biyadel Asoisai, or even if it won't come on its own, I have the ability to make it come. Beloi Hefsid, without too much of a loss. But something that I don't have the capacity to make a heter. Ve'inoi vadai shiavai, and won't certainly come. Ve'inoi vadai shiavai amater, einoi b'din davar sheish lo matirin. In other words, for something to be yesh lo matirin, it has to be that the heter will come. Let's say Pesach will be over. It will be over. Or I have the ability to bring the heter. I could take off. Right now, this is tevel, and it will remain tevel forever. So it's not like the heter will come a mela, but I could make it come whenever I choose. I could take off truma. I could take off meiser, or let's say something is aser because I made a neder. So it's going to remain aser forever. But it's biyadi to go to a chacham and be mater it. So it needs to either come a mela, or I have the ability to make it come. Lefikach, therefore, beitza shel safek treifa. Let's say you have an egg of a safek treifa. Shenis arva ba'acheres, that got mixed with others. Einoi bedin davar sheish shel matirin. Is not a davar sheish shel matirin. Lefi she'ena matir bevadai. The heter won't for sure come. It might be a treifa, this egg. Ve'ena biyadai, and I don't have the ability to make it come. There's nothing coming that's going to be matir this egg, which is a safek treifa, and there's nothing I could do to make it come. So the Ber Heitev asks, what in the world is the Mechaber talking about? An egg which is a safek treifa? You would have a havamin that's davar sheish shel matirin? What? The reason why it's not davar sheish shel matirin is because the heter won't certainly come, and it's not biyadai to bring the heter. It's not davar sheish shel matirin because what exactly is? There's no heter. What's the heter? It might be a treifa. What's the Mechaber talking about? The Mechaber is saying, no, we don't apply davar sheish shel matirin to a safek treifa. Why? How could it apply? Why is this example given of something which is not davar sheish shel matirin? Of course it's not davar sheish shel matirin. There's no heter that's coming. The Ber Heitev in Sivkat and Hey asks, Hiksha, Meir Rav Moshe Milavuv, Lama Kasam Mechaber Lefisheina Mater Bevadai, Hadin Zed the subject of Loi Shayich Klal LeDavar Sheish Shel Matirin. There's no connection, applicability to davar sheish shel matirin at all. Davar sheish shel matirin is something that now is usher, tomorrow will become mutter. An egg of a safek treifa. It should become mutter miman of shach, the Ber Heitev says. If it turned out that this, in other words, what's the heter you're going to find? You're going to go to a chacham and he's going to tell you it's not a treifa. Miman of shach. If the egg's a treifa and it's asr, it should become batal. And if it's not a treifa, then it was never asr to begin with. In other words, the Ber Heitev says this is the worst example possible of davar sheish matirin. It has no shaychus whatsoever to davar sheish matirin. Miman of shach. You don't know if it's an egg of a treifa or not. So guess what? There are two possibilities. The possibilities are yes or no. So so let's take the yes. Let's say it is a treifa, then it should become batal. Let's say it's not a treifa, then it was never asr to begin with. So what was the Mechaber talking about?
Well, if it's an egg of a chicken, and we don't know if it's treifa, we can wait and see if it's how the chicken does.
It's just a beard.
Maybe eventually we'll see the chicken was good.
Is that a heter? Or just we're finding out what it was, right? It's not a heter. It's just right. Rabbi Yehuda is saying we're huvra davar that it wasn't a treifa. You're right. If it survives, good. If it survives, then it wasn't a treifa to begin with. If it doesn't survive, then it was a treifa. It's not a heter. So the Ber Heitev says something very interesting. We're talking about a beya shel safek treifa shenolda b'yamtiv. What the Mechaber means, a beya shel safek treifa is batal, it's talking about where it was noiled b'yamtiv. So you would think it shouldn't become batal. Just wait. Let me just wait. And the answer, no, I don't have to wait, because that's not going to take care. Because lamaisa, the issue of it being a treifa is not solved by waiting, and therefore I don't have to wait. Why do I have to wait? We're talking about an egg that's a safek treifa shenolda b'yamtiv. That's what the Mechaber means. Ayin Sham. I just wanted to bring out that question. It's interesting. The Shach and Taz don't discuss this question, but I thought it was just like a pashata, something we need to think about. Okay. Okay, Sif Gimel. Sif Gimel is a whopper. Sif Gimel is a whopper. Now let's talk about a kli that absorbed Isser. A kli that absorbed Isser that got mixed with other kalim. You have one kli, it absorbed pig fat. You cooked pig in a kli, and that kli got mixed up with other kalim. Okay? So halacha is kli shenesar beblias Isser, a kli that became Asr by absorbing Isser, shenesariv ba'achirim, that got mixed with others. Ve'eno nikar, you can't tell which kli absorbed Isser. Batel b'raiv, it's batel b'raiv. Why? V'ein donin oiseh kedavar sheyeish lo matirin. And we're not going to consider it like davar sheyeish lo matirin. So you say, why would it be davar sheyeish lo matirin? Hagala, because you could kasher it. That's a very clear way that it's davar sheyeish lo matirin. You could kasher it. So why don't we consider the ability to kasher something davar sheyeish lo matirin? Says the Ramah. The Mechaber doesn't say, by the way, this is very important. The Mechaber is quoting the Rashba. The Mechaber is quoting the Rashba. That kalim that absorbed Isser, even though you could kasher it, is not davar sheyeish lo matirin, therefore it's batal. But the Mechaber doesn't explain why. You know why? Says Ramah, Lefi shetzarach lahaitzi alav haitzois lahagilai. Because it costs money. It costs money to kasher it. Didn't the Mechaber just say in Beis that the definition of davar sheyeish lo matirin is either if it's going to come, or I could bring it without a loss, but it costs me money to do Hagala. I have to heat up the water, so my gas bill is going to go up, or it takes time. It costs money. It's not a lot of money. It costs money. That's not davar sheyeish lo matirin. Why? I would say Rashi in Beis says, why is davar sheyeish lo matirin not batal? We say, why should we rely on bittul? Just wait. So I say, wait for what? So the Chum say, wait until I kasher it. So I say, I don't want to kasher it. It costs me money. Don't tell me just wait. Just. What do you mean just wait? Not just. I don't want to pay money. The Chachamim gave a heter called bittul, but they don't want you to use it if you could wait. They're not going to turn around to a guy and say, just wait. Well, I say, wait and what? It's a pain in the neck to kasher it. I have to heat up the water. I have to stick it in the pot. It's dangerous. It's costly. It takes up time. I don't want to do that. You don't want me to take the easy way out of relying on bittul if I could just wait. Waiting is not, for me, kashering is a pain in the neck. For whatever reason. It costs money. It's a tercha, yisera. That's how the Ramah is masber, the Mechaber who quotes the Rashba. Okay? There's a lot of amazing lamdas here. Okay? So that's Sif Gimel. Now, at first glance it would seem, remember I said that we don't say davar sheyeish lo matirin on bliyos, only on something that has mamashos. So why is the Ramah saying, oh, you know why there's no davar sheyeish lo matirin on a kli shenesar beblias Isser? Because it costs money to kasher it. The Ramah should just say very simply, davar sheyeish lo matirin does not apply to bliyos. The mashmais here is davar sheyeish lo matirin would apply to bliyos. Clearly, it would apply. Okay, but this question the Taz is going to ask next week in Sivkat on Yud, that the Ramah should have said a different reason why the davar sheyeish lo matirin doesn't apply here, because it's only bliyos. Fine. I'm just revving up because there's a Rabbi Yehuda here. You're going to be so happy to hear the Rabbi Yehuda. You might even you'll be so happy you can go home, you're going to eat bakser or something. That's how happy you're going to be. Okay? And then if you need a dentist, you go to Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. Siv Katan Ches, says the Shach. Kli lefi shetzarach. The Marshal comes and says, I don't know why the Ramah had to say the reason why it's not batal is because it costs money. Kasav Marshal Parakal Abasar Seif Pevav Deloy Hoyat Sarach Lazatam. The Ramah didn't need this reason of Shal Pizur Ma'isav that it's going to cost money. Ki Belav Hachinami, because even without that, Kivan Deloy Ba HaHeter Mamela Mikayach Zman, is the heter going to come automatically as time passes, like Pesach is over or Yom Tif is over? No, you have to do a Maisa. So since the heter doesn't come Mamela, it's Loi Chashav Davar Sheyeish Matirim. The Marshal says, I don't know why the Ramah had to give this complicated answer that Hagala costs money. Forget the money. It's not a heter that comes by itself. Says the Shach, I didn't really get what the Marshal's talking about. Since when does Davar Sheyeish Matirim have to come Mamela? Even if the heter doesn't come through time, chashav davar sheish matin. Kagoy nedarim. If you have something which is also al's neder, it's davar sheish matin. Even though the heter doesn't come on its own, it comes because you could go to a chacham to be mashal. So then, from there we see it doesn't have to come on its own. By the way, the Pischei Tshuva says that regarding the Shach's kasha on the Marshal, that Nedarim doesn't come on its own, the Tshuvas Beis Yaakov defends the Marshal. No. Nedarim is different. Because there's a mitzvah to be mater your neder. There's no mitzvah to do Hagala on Kalim. There's no mitzvah to kasher your Kalim. In other words, fundamentally, maybe you do need a heter that comes on its own. By Nadarim it doesn't come on its own. No, that's because you're supposed to go ahead and do it. That the Gemara Nadarim itself said that. By Nadarim it's a mitzvah because Kol hamanader ki'ilu bana bama v'chol hamakaimoi ki'ilu hikrav alav carbon. It's a mitzvah to be mater your neder. There's no mitzvah to do Hagalas Kalim. That's how Pischei Tshuva brings the Beis Yaakov. He answers the Marshal from the Shach. Weiter. Then the Shach says, the Ra'ah in Bedek Habayis questions the Rashba. And he says, I don't know what he's talking about. So the Rashba says, this is not Davar Sheyeish Matirim because it costs money to kasher it. Fine. But there's a different reason why this should not be batal. And this reason that it should not be batal should make it that it's not batal midaraisa. Everybody knows the basic rule of bittul is that something is batal when you cannot identify it. When it's in a taruvais. What if you have a pig fell into a cholent? Pig. And you look in the pot of cholent and you see, oink, oink, there's a pig in there. It's oinking at you. You're allowed to eat the cholent? Or if you see the actual pig in there, I don't care how big the cholent is, you gotta yank it out. There's no bittul if you could identify the isser. So says the Ra'ah, of course this is not, of course the Rashba is wrong. How could the Rashba say this is not Davar Sheyeish Matirim? Maybe it's not Davar Sheyeish Matirim, but there's no way this could become batal, because since you could do Hagala, that means you could extract the Isser. So how can you rely on Bittul? I mean, the basic premise of Bittul is, somewhere in here there's Isser, I can't get it out. You could do Hagala. Hagala basically uproots the whole concept of Bittul in the first place. Bittul is, there's Isser in here, we don't know where. Okay, it's Batal. Yeah, but I do know where, I could get it out. How could you rely on Bittul? The Bedek Habayis says that fundamentally this din and this Sif Gimel and the Shulchan Aruch is dead wrong. The Mechaber Paskins and the Ramah agrees that a Kli that absorbed Isser that got mixed with others is mutter. Why? It's not Davar Sheyeish Matirim. The Bedek Habayis says, I say not only is it Asar, it's Asar Midaraisa. Because there's no Taruvais. Why no Taruvais? I could identify the Isser, I could do Hagala, I could kasher it. Says the V'hara'ava Bedek Habayis Dav Kuf Chav Ches Amid Beis Masagal Araja V'oimer Dahacha Taima Achrini Kad Ein Loi Betel. There's another reason. Levad Mi Taima De Davar Sheyeish Matirim. The chalhecha de nikara iser, whenever the iser is nikara, ein leibito. V'kiven the efshel ha'itzia iser mitocha, since it's possible to remove it, aideh hagala, it's like nikar ha'iser. The Maril says, the Maril also argues on the Rajva. He says, could you please tell me, Raja, how much money it's costing you to do hagala? How much it costs you? 73 cents? Oh, big haitzah. Yeah, all of a sudden, hagala is a big haitzah. It's a hefsid muat. Maril b'tshuva siman kuf tzali dalid choli gam ken harajba the haitzah la'agiloi hefsid muathu. And therefore, the Shach concludes, v'yesh lachosh ledvarav. You need to be concerned for the Maril. B'makom shein hefsid meruba. If it's not costing you a lot of money, you have to be concerned for the Maril. Namely, that this is not a real hefsid, that it's going to cost you money to kasher a kli. By the way, then the Shach adds, since we have the svara of the ra'ah, that it shouldn't even be bato midairaisa, because you could kasher it and you could be makir the iser. You know what else you need to do? You should wait 24 hours. This way the taste is eino ben yoimai, and at least midairaisa, it's batal. See, at first I was here, look at this line. V'gam nirali, it would also seem to me, Sheyeish lishois hakelim, you should wait with the kelim, ad shala yiu b'nei yom, until they're not b'nei yom, da'az shari min ha'torah, then it's permitted min ha'torah. Last night I was learning this. I didn't understand that line. You should wait 24 hours because this way it will become mutter min ha'torah. Why would it be aser min ha'torah? Because of davar sheyeish lo matirin? Davar sheyeish lo matirin is not batal midairaisa? I thought it's not batal midrabanan. I couldn't understand what the Shach was saying. The Shach is saying you should wait 24 hours, so this way it's at least batal midairaisa. It's batal midairaisa anyway. Nobody says davar sheyeish lo matirin. In other words, we're arguing on the Rajba. The Rajba says it's batal because it's too expensive to kasher. So the Maril says, no, it's not so expensive. And therefore, it's davar sheyeish lo matirin. And therefore, it's not batal. But the Maril never was saying it's not batal midairaisa. So why should I wait 24 hours to make sure it's not batal midairaisa? To make sure it's batal midairaisa? Nobody would say it's not batal midairaisa. What the Shach means is, it's not only the Maril. It's also the Ra'ah. The Ra'ah said, if I could kasher it, then I could identify the Yisr, and it's not even batal midairaisa, because how could you say bittul over here if there's no taruvais? Because the Yisr is removable. That Svara would say that perhaps it's not even batal midairaisa. That's why the Shach says you need to wait 24 hours. It's not only because the Maril says that kashering is not such a hefsid. It's also because of this other logic that since you could kasher it, it's like makir the iser. Makir the iser means there's no taruvis. It's not even batal midairaisa. Okay, now then the Shach says that, so the Shach concluded that you should be choishesh for the Maril if there isn't a loss, that you should deem this davar sheyeish lo matirin, if there's not a hefsid meruba. And what he means is, even where it is a hefsid meruba, and you want to rely on the bittul, you should still wait 24 hours. Okay, that's how you read the Shach. In other words, l'chatchila, you should be choishesh for the Maril, that we'll say it's not batal unless it's a hefsid meruba, because we'll call it davar sheyeish lo matirin. And even if you do want to rely on bittul, and you're going to be soimech on the Rajba, you should still wait 24 hours. Then the Shach says that he quotes the Masas Binyamin, who says you only have to wait 24 hours if you want to use all the different kalim in this mixture. But to use one of them, you don't have to wait 24 hours. And the Shach says, I disagree. Even to use one of the kalim, you have to wait 24 hours. Even to use one of the kalim, you should have to wait 24 hours. And then he brings in a chumrah of the bach. So now the Shach holds, listen to this, let's just say this clearly. The Shach says, l'chatchila, you should be choshesh for the maril. The maril holds that kashering kalim is davar sheyeish al matirin because the expense is minimal. And even b'makom hefsid meruba, where you could rely on the Rajba and say it's not davar sheyeish al matirin and it's batal, you should still wait 24 hours. You should wait 24 hours even if you want to use only one of the kalim. And there's a chumrah of the bach, you should take out one of the kalim. This way, maybe you got out the one that was asar. That's an added chumrah. The Shach says that he doesn't really feel you have to do that, but if there's not a loss, you should take out one of the kalim. Now, let's see the Taz. Let's see the Taz. The Taz says, the Taz has a kasha. Why does the Rajva need this reason that it's not davar sheyeish al matirin? Because it costs money. Why don't we say the following principle? Ein hanesar, the nesar is that which become asar, the kli, can't asar more than the thing that asared it. Question, what asared the kli? What asared the kli is an absorbed taste. We don't say on an absorbed taste davar sheyeish al matirin. The absorbed taste is davar habalua. There's no din of davar sheyeish al matirin. There's no heter on the absorbed taste. So how could the thing that became asr be more asr than what made it asr? What made it asr? An absorbed taste. There's no heter on an absorbed taste. How do you matter an absorbed taste which is asr? So why don't we apply the rule, ein hanesar yachal la'asar yoiser min ha'oiser. This is a classic rule that we apply throughout Yeridea, that which became asr can't be more asr than that which asred it. And the Taz says, yeah, we could apply. Davar sheyeish al matirin is so chamor that since this kli will have a heter, we ignore all lenient svaras because just wait. Then the Taz quotes the Marshal that this is not davar sheyeish al matirin because it's not ba memela. The Taz concludes as follows, that even though the Marshal disagrees with the Mechaber, and the Marshal says it should not be batal, it's not davar sheyeish. In other words, the Marshal gives a different reason why it's not davar sheyeish al matirin, namely because the heter is not ba memela. So we have two reasons then why it's not davar sheyeish al matirin. We have the Mechaber's reason is Hagala is expensive. We have the Marshal's reason that it's not ba memela. The Taz concludes that you could be soymech on the Rashba. Right? The Shach said don't be soymech on the Rashba. The Shach said you have to be choshesh for the maril, that the expense is ridiculous, it's a minor expense. We're not going to consider this davar sheyeish al matirin. We're not going to consider this davar sheyeish al matirin because the expense is minimal. The Taz says you could be soymech on the Rashba. First of all, an expense is an expense. Second of all, it's not ba memela. But the Taz So again, the Shach says, l'chatchila, do not be samech on the Rashba. The Taz says you could be samech on the Rashba. However, says the Taz, even though you could be samech on the Rashba, and the truth is you could use all of these kelim. You could use all these kelim. But don't keep them in your house too long. Because even though you could use each kli by itself, are you allowed to use all the kelim together? No, because if you use all the kelim together, then one of them is usher. We're afraid if you keep it in your house too long, you're going to cook something in all three of these kelim. And then the food is for sure going to be usher because it definitely went into a kli that had Isser in it. So even though, in other words, the Taz says fundamentally, I disagree with the Shach. The Shach doesn't want to rely on this Rashba. The Rashba says it's not Davar Sheyeish lo Matirim because it's expensive, and the Marshal says it's not Davar Sheyeish lo Matirim because it's not Bal Mamela. The Shach says no. This is classic Davar Sheyeish lo Matirim, and you have to be Choshesh that it's not Batal, unless it's a hefsid meruba. And even when it is a hefsid meruba, you need to wait 24 hours. The Taz says no, you could be samech on the Rashba l'chatchila. However, don't keep it in your house too long. If you keep it in your house too long, you're bound to cook something in all of the kelim, and that's for sure going to be a problem. So you want to rely on the Rashba, rely on the Rashba. You want to cook in it, but do it for a day or two, and then kasher. You ready for this? You ready for this? I'm going to tell you the Rabbi Yehuda of the century. Comes the Rabbi Yehuda, and the Rabbi Yehuda says there's a very simple reason why this is not Davar Sheyeish lo Matirim. There's a very simple, not the way the Ramah explained it. No, it's not Davar Sheyeish lo Matirim. It costs money to kasher. It doesn't cost so much money. Not because of the Marshal, that it doesn't come Mamela. It doesn't have to come Mamela. There's a very simple reason why there's not Davar Sheyeish lo Matirim. Could somebody tell me what's the lamdas? The Pischei Tshuva brings this down. This is an amazing Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason why Davar Sheyeish lo Matirim is not batal? We say, pal, you have to. This egg was born on Yom Tov. It's somewhere in this mixture. Say, no, I want to utilize bittul. We say, pal, just wait till tomorrow. Don't utilize bittul. Wait till tomorrow. And the egg that you wanted to eat today, you could get that egg tomorrow. We're not making you lose out anything. You're hungry, you want eggs, so instead of eating the egg today, you'll eat it tomorrow. The Lamda says, why eat it today if you could eat it tomorrow? Says the Rabbi Yehuda, but I don't want to eat an egg here. I want to use a kli. So what are you telling me? Don't use the kli today. You could use it tomorrow. What are you talking about? I want to use it today and tomorrow. So what are you helping me? What are you telling me? You're a bad therapist, right? The lumdus of why Davar Sheyeish lo Matirim is not batal is because we're giving the guy therapy. We're telling him, pal, we're not causing you any loss. You want to eat the egg? You'll eat it tomorrow. We're not making you lose out. You could do it tomorrow. The Rabbi Yehuda says Davar Sheyeish lo Matirim, let's say, doesn't apply if it's something that you could use. Because if it's something you could use, don't tell me I can use it tomorrow. But I'm losing out using it today. You see, eating, you can only eat once. You can only eat the egg once. Did you know that once you eat the egg, you can't eat it again? I'm telling you, Chiddush Noira, that once you eat an egg, you can't eat the egg again. So we tell you that why do you need to rely on bittul? Just wait till tomorrow. We're not taking anything away from you. You could partake of this very thing tomorrow. But that doesn't apply by a kli. By a kli, it's a matter of hishtamshus, usage. So we say, don't rely on bittul, just wait. Yeah, but if I wait, I'm losing out. I'm not getting what I want to get. I want to use it today and tomorrow. And there's nothing you could tell me. So what do you mean just wait? Just wait is a svara. We're not causing you to lose out. What you want to do, you'll just do it tomorrow. But that's by eating, not by usage. By usage, this whole logic doesn't apply.
By usage, just do Hagala. It's not waiting. It's like the Meiser. The Meiser's not waiting. It's take the Meiser. Do the Hagala.
Okay, but that's a different point. Even without that, it's not Davar Sheyeish lo Matirim. What's a Davar Sheyeish lo Matirim? You're going to tell me what? To kasher it?
Marshal, you can say that, where it's just something that comes from Meir. So then, this one comes, that's probably on time. But you're not using the usage, just do Hagala now, and you can use it.
Just do Hagala. No, but in the meantime, I want to use it now.
So it's
going to take me 5 minutes to do Hagala. But right now, you're making me lose out on the 5 minutes I can use the cleaner. I want to use it before the Hagala and after the Hagala.
But you can only eat the egg once.
You can only eat the egg. You could use it always. So don't take, no, do Hagala. Yeah, in the meantime, what am I going to use? For the next 10 seconds, you're taking that away from me. You're taking something away from me. Rabbi Yehuda says. Now, we're doing okay, it's 9:19. I need 8 more minutes, okay? Because we gotta cover ground. So we're gonna do a little bit more in the Ramah. I'm sorry, but they it's Tu B'Shvat, so we have to do more. It's well known that on Tu B'Shvat you have to do more Ramah because the days get longer, so the nights get shorter. So it's just one of those things. Okay, and ha'adam eitz hasada, man is like a tree. So if you're like a tree, you have to do more Ramah. I thought you would go for that. Okay, so the Ramah says like this. Okay, one more din in the Ramah. Ha de davar sheyeish lo matirin einoi batal. That which davar sheyeish lo matirin is not batal. Hainu what? Oh, sorry. Sif Daled. Okay, thank you. Yesh mishamer. Another yesh mishamer. Deloi shaykh davar sheyeish lo matirin heicha shamaycha maskalkel. If the food is going to get ruined while you wait for it to be for Yom Tiv to be over, or for Pesach to be over, and in the meantime the food's going to spoil, then we don't say Davar Sheyeish Lo Matirim. Because what do you mean wait? By the time I wait, it's not going to be round. It's going to be spoiled. We don't say Davar Sheyeish Lo Matirim if it's going to get ruined. Fine. Says the Ramah. Ha de Davar Sheyeish Lo Matirim Einoi Batal Hainu Davka Im HaIsser Ba'en. It's only Isser that has mamashas, reality, substance. Or there is substance to the Isser in the mixture. Aval tamoy batal, something that just is flavor. We do not apply the rule of davar sheyeish lo matirin. Says the Taz of Katan Tes. Perosh she'im ha'isser nito misham. In a case where the Isser is removed, let's say you have an egg that was born on Yom Tov, but the egg was taken out, so now all that you have in there is flavor of Isser. Raksha palat shamtam, raksha palat shamtam, it expelled taste. Oisay tam eno chamer, that tam is not chamer, le'esar b'shul davar sheyeish lo matirin. We said in Sif Aleph that if you fill up a chicken with an egg, let's say, it's called min b'mino and it's not batal because it's enhancing the flavor. And so there we're saying flavor is not batal. No, that's where the flavor was meant to enhance the food. But if it just happens to be flavor that got absorbed into food, that will become batal. So it's not similar to what we said in Sif Aleph, that if you put in an egg, if you put an egg into a cooked dish to enhance the flavor, then it's not batal, because there it's meant to enhance the dish. Now the bottom line, the Ramah paskins that tam of davar sheyeish lo matirin is batal.
It has mushos and you can see it. It's never batal.
Yeah, but if it got mixed in and you don't know where, then something that has mamashas, usually it's batal on the taruvais. And davar sheyeish matirin, it won't be batal on the taruvais. But if the thing got removed and all that you have in the taruvais is the flavor, then the Ramah shita is tam will become batal. Now, so that means the Taz concurs with the Ramah. Tam of davar sheyeish matirin is batal. And the Shach in Sivkatan Tes disagrees. The Shach holds tam of davar sheyeish matirin is not batal. Says the Shach, v'ha de'im lavnoi by hamachal oimaloi by tanagoylas einoi batal hainu mishum dechashav mamasha shal iser. That you whiten a food or you fill it up with an egg, it's not batal. That's because it has mamashas of iser. V'loi chashav nimuach. It's not considered dissolved. Ve'eno be'en. Rak kishe'eno nikar b'mara. That's only when it's not apparent in to be able to see it. Ela b'tam, only in taste. It's only considered dissolved when you can't see it and all you have is taste. Bottom line is, what the Ramah is saying is tam of davar sheyeish matirin is batal. However, the Shach disagrees. The Shach says miut tzarich ian gam bezeh. The Nira Lafi Anias Daiti Min Hashas and Nadarim and the Yushalmi and the Rosh and the Ran Nadarim, the Davar Sheyeish Matirin Afilu Tamoy Loi Batal B'minoi. Even flavor is not batal. Even flavor is not batal. Why? Let's say if you skip a few lines down, one of the rayas that the Shach brings is that the Torah says in the name of Rabbeinu Tam that davar sheyeish matirin einoi batal. That's only b'minoi. Aval shaloi b'minoi, the tam is batal. That implies b'minoi, the tam is einoi batal. The Shach brings a whole slew of rayas that even flavor of davar sheyeish matirin is not batal. The Shach then wants to say, well, that maybe all the cases that indicate tam is batal, that tam is not batal, that's when the guf ha'isser is in there, it's just not be'en. For example, let's say wine falls into wine. So the guf ha'isser is not be'en. It's not a substantive thing, but it gives taste. That's when we say that it's not batal. But if a piece of Isser falls in and you remove it, maybe then it would become batal. And the Shach says, tell you the truth, I don't think that makes a difference. In my opinion, the Shach says, his conclusion is, Ube'emes le'inyan dina nira da'afilu ha'yitzia shalem tamai lai batal. The Shach argues on the Ramah. He says, even if you were to remove something, let's say a piece of treif steak of davar sheyeish matirin, that's not a good case of davar sheyeish matirin. Let's say you have an egg that was born on Yom Tov that got mixed with other eggs and it was taken out, the flavor of that egg will not become batal. Lahalacha, the Shach argues on the Ramah. He says he doesn't like the chiluk. There's no difference whether some of the residue remains in it or you completely take it out. You know why? Says the Shach, you know why I feel tam should not be batal by davar sheyeish matirin? Because the logic why davar sheyeish matirin is not batal is wait. Ad she'toichlenu be'isser, toichlenu beheter. So what difference does it make whether there's mamashas there or whether it's flavor there? The flavor shouldn't become batal. You know why? Because why rely on bittul when you could just wait? Why rely on bittul when you could just wait? Ubalav hachi doichik lechalik ben tamai de shanisha shamay loy de soif ad shata oichal be'isser techlan better. So I I'm focusing on this, it's a big shach. I'm focusing on his line, miut tzarchion, like the fourth line on the shach, gam bazeh, because he brings many, many rayas that tam is not batal. Toward almost near the end, he says, "Ube'emes le'inyan dina nira da'afilu haitziyah shalim." Even if you took it out, tam loy batal. And he concludes, "Ubelav hachi," that it's very doichik to be machalik whether the item is dissolved in there or you took it out completely. The Seif ad shata oichel be'isr toichlenu beheter. Okay, Rabbi say, it was a sheer malay, but thank you for hanging in there. And next week we're gonna at least finish Kuf Beis and begin Kuf Gimel. Okay? Have a great night, everyone. Shkoyach.